Bruchim Abayim, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful Purim. We had a fantastic Purim. The sun was shining.
Yeah.
There was all sorts of stuff going on. Just to mention, last year's share on this week's Parsha is called Cryogenic. It should be on TorahAnytime.com by now. So have a listen to that if you want. I'm going to give you a few points about this week's Parsha, and then I'm going to give you a lovely story. So, Parshat Shemini. Let's look at the beginning, and we're going to see Perek Tet, Pasuk Zayin, talks about how the inception of the Mishkan, the unveiling of the Mishkan, was conducted. So we see something a little bit strange in Pasuk Zayin, because it says there, Vayomer Moshe el Aaron, Karav el HaMizbeach. Moshe Rabbeinu said to his brother Aaron, come close to the Mizbeach. Why was he urging him to come close? If Aaron had to go and serve in the Mizbeach, Aaron could go by himself. He didn't need his brother to say, come. Like, he didn't need any hand-holding, didn't need any urging or encouraging. So why was Moshe Rabbeinu acting in this manner? And the answer is that Aaron was reluctant. Would you believe it? Aaron was the person who would jump at any avoda, anything to serve Hashem. Aaron would be there straight away. How come he was reluctant? The answer is because he was remembering about the Egel, the golden calf, and his involvement. I say involvement in inverted commas, because Aaron, the last thing he wanted to do was create an avodah zarah. He did something in deed, but not in machshava, not in thought. But he felt embarrassment, he felt shame, he felt culpability because of this aveira of the golden calf. So he didn't want to, he was reluctant. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, come, Karav, come close, come and take part. And Moshe Rabbeinu praised Aaron for this. Why was he praised because of this? Says Rashi, this is why you've been chosen. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to Aaron. Because you're so humble, because you feel that when there's an aveira, do you think you did, and you feel a sense of shame, that's why you're chosen for the job. We don't want people to serve Hashem who are very sure of themselves. Oh, nobody can do the job better than me. Because we're going to see in a few parashiyot time, quite a few weeks time, maybe a few months time, we're going to see a story of Korach. He was somebody who felt very confident with his ability to serve Hashem. Oh, I should be the person for the job. Nobody else. Oh, because I was born for this. I've got Ruach HaKodesh, and I can see that I'm going to have a descendant called Shmuel. So therefore, there's nobody better for the job than me. We see what happened to him. And Aaron was the opposite. He felt very unworthy. He was so conscious of his aveira that caused him to feel unworthy. And that's exactly why he was chosen for the job, and that's exactly why he was so worthy. And it reminds me that we always say in every generation there's 36 tzaddikim, Lamed Vav tzaddikim. And we know that if there's somebody who turns around and says, you know, the 36 tzaddikim, I'm one of them. If a person says that, he's definitely not one of the 36 tzaddikim. Why? Because if you think you are, then you're not. Because it goes against what being a tzaddik is. To be a tzaddik, you say, look, me, how can I be a tzaddik? I'm not worthy to serve Hashem. I've got so much, whatever they've got, each one knows his story. But he will never turn up, raise his hand, say, hey, there's only 35 left to find. You've got one here standing in front of you. There was another interesting thing about the incident with the altar. It says the Torah's Kohanim that the Mizbech appeared to Aaron like an ox, like a shor. How come it appeared like ox, and that's why he was afraid to go forward? The simple answer is because we just explained he was very worried about the sin of the golden calf. So that's why it appeared to him like an ox. Very nice. It's a nice answer. Go home. Brilliant. What else is there to say? But you have to ask yourself the question. It wasn't the Shor HaZahav. It wasn't the golden ox. It was a golden calf. Why did it not appear like a calf? A small ox. A baby ox. Why? Like a fully grown animal? Again, another interesting answer. You have to understand why Aaron got involved in this Aveira in the first place. We all know he was doing delaying tactics. He didn't want the Bnei Israel to serve the golden calf. He didn't want anything to happen. He wanted Moshe Rabbeinu to come down or the problem would just disappear. So he tried this delaying tactic. What did he do? Which animal did he choose? A calf. He says, make a calf. Why? Calf is small. It's innocuous. It's a little baby animal. What can a little baby animal do? Oh, but by this time, the whole thing had spiraled out of all control. And now, the little baby animal, the little baby calf had now become a big, fully grown ox. You see how these things snowball? There's a lesson in there for all of us. Because many times we think, you know what? Obviously, we're not talking about Aaron. I'm using it as a mashal, as an example. Sometimes we think, what's this little Aveira? So what? I have a little drink on Purim and, another one. It's a mitzvah. Okay, now Purim's over. Now it comes to the following Shabbat. I'll have a whiskey. It's a simcha. And then you go to a wedding. Just a drink here. And then suddenly the thing spirals out of control. If a person knows his fallibilities, he should keep away from these things. There's no such thing as a small Aveira, because small Aveiras very quickly turn into big Aveiras. Don't we say in Pirkei Avot, Aveira goreret Aveira? And one sin brings another sin. Maybe this one sin brings the same sin but just bigger. Like the frogs. What happened with the frog? Big frog came, the Egyptians hit the frogs, and more frogs came. Things spiraled out of control. There's another lesson we learn from Aaron HaKohen. Aaron, when he was asked to approach the altar, and that is that we are all human. Nobody is free of Aveirot. Nobody is born the Chofetz Chaim. Nobody is born Rashi or Rambam. All these tzaddikim, they had their own challenges. They and Hashem know what the challenges were. We don't know what the challenges were. We don't know what the Chofetz Chaim went through. I think he was born, and as soon as he was born, he started talking and giving musar and giving shiurim. No, he grew up. He had his own tests. Obviously, he passed his tests because we know him as the Chofetz Chaim. Now, everybody has their own tests. Aaron is showing us here. Look, even somebody as great as Aaron, even he felt humbled. Even he felt, because he took part in this debacle of the golden calf, even he felt imperfect. So we shouldn't feel bad. If we do an Aveira, first of all we have to resolve not to do it again. But don't say, you know what, I'm a write-off now. Forget it. I'm like the car who got involved in an accident. It gets a zetz, gets a bash, and finished. It's written off. Now that car's no longer roadworthy. We're not cars. We're not creations of Hashem that get written off. Hashem is not writing us off. Why do we write ourselves off? Suddenly, now I'm a balavera. Now I'm a sinner. I'm going to carry on sinning. I'm a write-off. Aaron is showing us you should never be written off. He felt humbled. Moshe encouraged him. Perhaps what we need maybe somebody to encourage us. Maybe somebody to say, you know what? Let's write that sin off. Don't write yourself off. Write the sin off. Resolve not to do it again. Okay, it's a bad thing. So put it to bed. Put it away. Don't do it again. And move on. Don't consider yourself like that smashed car in the junkyard That's good for nothing. We're human beings. We're all human. We're all fallible. But we have to regenerate and we have to move on. And who else had something that he perhaps may not have wanted to shout and scream about? And that is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu himself was supposed to be the Kohen Gadol. You know that? He was supposed to be the Kohen Gadol serving in the Mishkan. He was supposed to be the head of everything. How come? Well, he lost his privilege to be the Kohen Gadol and he went to Aaron. So now, what did Moshe Rabbeinu have to do? Aaron had to be the one who was doing the avodah, doing the service in the Mishkan. And Moshe Rabbeinu now had to indict him. So how do you think Moshe Rabbeinu felt? We discussed this before. He felt so pleased for his brother that he felt he himself was serving in the Mishkan. I was Aaron. Aaron was the one who was doing all the avodah. But Moshe Rabbeinu felt he was there. He was like there by proxy because he was so proud for his brother. He completely negated all his negative feelings. If there was any negative feeling there, it was like nothing. I should feel you took this away from me. This was stripped from me and given to you. No. All these feelings were non-existent. And there's another interesting thing I heard, that there were offerings, there were sacrifices going on in the Mishkan. What type of sacrifice was going for which type of person? Aaron offered one type of sacrifice, and on behalf of the people, there was another type of sacrifice. What's the significance? Aaron offered a korban chatat, a sin offering, and the people offered a burnt offering, korban olah, that went up. It was burnt on the mizbech, it went up completely. What's the difference between a sin offering and a burnt offering? The answer is a sin offering is for something which is done in action. You make an action. And the machshava, the thought, is not necessarily there. I'll give you an example. If on Shabbat, let's talk in the times of the Beit HaMikdash. If on Shabbat somebody forgot it was Shabbat. You know, sometimes you wake up, you forget it's Shabbat. Oh, I thought it was Tuesday. I thought it was Friday or whatever. You know, we all get dizzy and delirious sometimes, and we forget. And then we start doing melacha. And someone tells us, oh, it's Shabbat today. Oh, I forgot. I can't believe I did this melacha. He was conscious he was doing the melacha. He wasn't doing it like in his sleep. He knew what he was doing. He just didn't know it was Shabbat. Or he was doing an action which he did not know was forbidden on Shabbat. He didn't know the intricacies of borer, of separating. Or he didn't know that you're not allowed to dig in the garden. That's called chofer. Or any of the other malachot. He didn't know. I know it's Shabbat. I just didn't know this was part of the things that were forbidden on Shabbat. You would have to bring a korban chatat. Why? Because it's just an action you're doing. There was no premeditation. You weren't thinking, it's Shabbat. What can I do to break Shabbat? Of course not. This is called shogeg, something which is inadvertent. For that, you bring a korban chatat. You bring a sin offering. Because there was no thought that went behind it. You didn't plan to do it. It happened in action. Now what about the burnt offering? That is where there is a premeditation, where you knew what you were doing. There's something you were doing that you were conscious you were doing it. That you bring a burnt offering. Why was the sin offering with the action for Aaron, and for the people there was a burnt offering? Because this is all to do with the sin of the golden calf. Because Aaron, his part in the golden calf was certainly not premeditated. He had no conception he had no idea that he was going to do something that was going to form into a golden calf, form into Avodah Zarah. He was only doing an empty action to put them off, to delay them. But the people knew what they were doing. They knew they were going to serve an Avodah Zarah. They had to bring a burnt offering. They had to bring something because there was a premeditation there. They knew what they were doing. So that's an interesting idea. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Perek Yud, Pasuk Gimel. Now this, we've talked about in previous years, this was one of the saddest points in the history of the Jewish people in the Midbar. The death of two of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu. What was Aaron's action? We've discussed in previous years. It says Vayidom Aaron in Pasuk Gimel. Aaron was silent. Does that mean he was Chas v'Chalila? Could we say that he was unaffected by it? He was heartless? He never reacted? So in previous years we've discussed and we've said that it meant he felt such a connection with Hashem, an inexorable connection with Hashem, that he totally identified with the Borei Olam, with Hashem Yitbarach. Therefore, anything extraneous to that, anything that would belie or belittle or put any question or doubt onto what Hashem had just done to his two sons, would have shown, he didn't really identify with Hashem. This was complete and utter bitul. He was nullified to Hashem. However, there are a few explanations why his two sons were killed, why they had to suffer this death of all days on the dedication of the Mishkan. Because his sons drank wine. They were inebriated. Now, why does a person drink? A person drinks because he feels he needs to achieve an altered state. He needs to get to a different place. That's also a reason why people take drugs. There's all types of addictions, because they're not happy where they are. They're not happy with themselves. They need an external stimulus to get them somewhere else. I'm not happy being who I am. I don't like where I live, who I live with. I don't like my life. So I need to escape. They call it a space cadet. Somebody who's on drugs, he's a space cadet. Why? He's flying somewhere else. He's not on this earth. He's on Mars. He's on Jupiter. He's wandering, he's on a satellite. Because he's not happy where he is. So that, in effect, was what Nadav and Avihu was showing. This external stimuli is taking us to another level. Now, of course, we can't ascribe any of our preconceptions to tzaddikim like Nadav and Avihu. They, of course, had their own idea. It was wrong, ultimately, but they had their own thought. I'm sure their thoughts were way, way more sublime than we can even possibly imagine. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, Aaron was showing the opposite. Aaron was showing, I don't need any external influence. I identify completely with Hashem. I don't need to drink. I don't need to go somewhere else. I'm happy where I am. I'm with Hashem, and that's it. And we see subsequently, there's a command given for the Kohanim to abstain from drinking when they're serving in the Mishkan. Why is that? For this exact reason. Because they don't need this external influence. They don't need to go somewhere else. They need to be right there, concentrated, and showing a sense of bitul, a sense of nullification to anything external, and only identifying with Hashem. And I was thinking to myself when I was preparing this shir, but why do we drink on Purim? Why is there a specific command to drink ad delo yada? Chayav adam libsumei ad delo yada. We are commanded to drink until We don't know the difference between, we say Baruch Mordechai and Aru Haman. We were supposed to get to a state where we're thinking Baruch Haman and Aru Mordechai. Why do we need this external stimulus? Why do we need to get to a different place? So I was thinking a couple of answers, nothing really settled well that I want to speak about it. So I want to throw it out to the public, anyone on TorahAnytime.com who wants to share an answer with me. I'd be very happy. If you want to write to me, rabbikalati@gmail.com, and maybe we'll share, if there's any answer, maybe we'll share it next week. Perhaps it means that the whole idea of Purim is v'na'afachu. Everything was turned upside down. That here maybe we also have to turn things upside down, because Hashem turned everything upside down. Maybe we have to go outside of the norm and turn things upside down ourselves. Maybe that's what the dream. I want to expand on that idea a little bit more. Maybe somebody else will give me a better answer. Okay. And moving on, we get to Moshe Rabbeinu's answer, Moshe Rabbeinu's comment. What can Moshe Rabbeinu say to his brother? He just watched his two nephews, or Aaron's two sons, obliterated, decimated, completely burnt on the inside, in front of everyone's eyes. What a terrible scene that must have been. So what could Moshe Rabbeinu say? Moshe Rabbeinu's words of consolation are, Vayomer Moshe el Aaron, Moshe said to Aaron, Hu asher diber Hashem, Lemor. This is, how do you translate it here? Of this did Hashem say. Like he's saying something in the past. He's saying, you know what? I'll tell you something which is already established. This is already something that Hashem has said. And then he goes on to say, Bikrovai ekadesh v'al pnei chol ha'am echaved v'yidom Aaron. He says, through only the greatest tzaddikim will Hashem's name be honored. Because we know there were great tzaddikim, Nadav and Avihu, the firstborn and the secondborn of Aaron. They were on a tremendously high level. You can't even conceive what high level they were on. So Moshe Rabbeinu was praising them and saying that they were great people. Hashem's name is sanctified only through great people. But what is this all about? Of this did Hashem say? Why bring up something which it seems like he's bringing up the past? So there's an interesting answer that I saw on this topic. That Moshe Rabbeinu is now giving Aaron an age-old answer. Not some knee-jerk reaction. Something that he had come up on the spur of the moment. It was actually saying something which would connect to all the previous generations that had ever been. What was he saying? He's saying, you know, this is not a new thing. This Hashem has already said previously. We are connecting your sadness to all the previous generations that had been before. Which is perhaps why we say, when we meet somebody who's in mourning, we say, Hamakom yenachem etchem b'toch shar avodat tziyun Yerushalayim. We say, may Hashem comfort you among the mourners of Jerusalem. What is this? You should be comforting them. What is it you're talking about? Mourners of Yerushalayim. Who are the mourners of Yerushalayim? The answer is that your issue, however personal it is to you, there are other people who also have had suffering. And they also empathize with you. And they're together with you in your suffering. You are not alone. You're not somebody who's suffering in silence by yourself. Because you should know that together with you and people who will comfort you are all the previous ancient generations, are all with you in your mourning and in your sadness. And that's what I was thinking, that perhaps you could make an analogy to somebody who is, God forbid, he's sitting on the floor, he just lost a loved one, and now he's seeing one or two people coming to visit him. But then the door opens and he sees outside thousands, millions of people all there sympathizing and empathizing. They all want to come and visit him, and they're all looking and they're feeling his pain so acutely. And now a person feels, my pain is not just my pain. All of them are together with me in my pain. You know, they say a problem shared is a problem halved. Imagine sharing your problem, and your problem being empathized with millions of people. How much that problem will be withered away, will be dissipated, because you're connecting with so many different people. Now, Perek Yud, Pasuk Chaf. What does it say there? Well, let's go to the previous pasuk. Vaydaber Aaron and Moshe. Aaron said to Moshe, Hein hayom hikrivu et chatatam vet olatam lifnei Hashem vatikrena oti ka'ele va'achalti chatat hayom hayitav b'nei Hashem. So now Aaron is speaking to Moshe. What's he saying to him? He's asking. He's bringing up a question. He's saying, was it they who offered this korban chatat and the olah before Hashem? He's reminding Moshe Rabbeinu of a halakha. And the next pasuk says, Vayishma Moshe vayitav beinav. And Moshe Rabbeinu heard and it was good in his eyes. What's going on here? What did Aaron say to Moshe Rabbeinu, and why was Moshe Rabbeinu so pleased? You know what happened here at this point? Moshe Rabbeinu forgot something. He forgot a halakha. And Aaron reminded him. And when Moshe Rabbeinu heard, he said, oh, that's very good. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for clarifying that, because I forgot. And now you reminded me. You said the right thing. What's so great about that? Why was Moshe Rabbeinu so pleased? I heard something incredible. If you think about it, let's put Moshe Rabbeinu back into context. Who was Moshe Rabbeinu? He gave the Torah. Can you imagine if it got out into the public forum, into all the press in the Midbar, and everyone got a hold of this hot scoop? What was the scoop of the day? Moshe Rabbeinu forgot a halacha. Oh, so now this is our lawgiver. He forgot something. If he forgot that thing, maybe he's forgotten something else. Maybe there's something he should be telling us that he didn't tell us. He's supposed to teach us. He's the Masorah. He's bringing the Torah from Har Sinai, and he's disseminating it through Aaron, through Yoshua, through the elders, and it's all coming down to the Bnei Israel. But he forgot something. Can that be just one solitary incident? And if he forgot one thing, maybe something else he forgot, and he added something. Maybe he added something that shouldn't have been there. And now the seeds of doubt could have been sown, and everyone's thinking, whoa, we're learning from somebody who's forgetting. And maybe he's adding. And now people don't feel so secure anymore. Now they don't know who to trust. So Moshe Rabbeinu, in effect, could have had a reason for withholding the truth, in not mentioning that he forgot something. Why do you want to bring that up? For people to doubt you? For people to have an excuse not to believe in you? So there are times when you can withhold the truth. There's times you can tell a white lie. And in fact, he wasn't going to tell a white lie. He just wasn't going to mention something. So, in effect, he would have had a reason to say, oh, you know what? I'm not going to mention that I forgot the halakha. But he dafka mentioned it. Why? Because I have to be connected to the emet. I have to be connected to the truth. I'm supposed to be representing Bnei Israel. A lie should come out of me. Something untrue should come out of me. And I'm not worried about the consequences. If somebody wants to doubt me, well, what can I do? Maybe Hashem will sort it out. But I am an Ish Emet. I have to follow my holy forefathers and say the truth, despite the ramifications. So here we see he could have just taken the law into his own hands and, let's not mention it. Let's keep it under wraps. So a tremendous lesson comes out of here. Sometimes we might make our own judgment and say, I don't need to mention this. Somebody's coming to me for a shidduch reference. I shouldn't mention this thing happened and that thing happened because it's not relevant and you're not supposed to disclose things. And you make all your own cheshbonot. Obviously, I'm not paskening. I'm not saying, you should blurt the truth out about everything. And I'm not also saying you should keep everything under wraps either. I'm saying if that's the case, you've got something which is questionable, at least ask somebody. Go to a competent Rav or a Dayan or somebody who you can ask a she'elah and ask them, should I disclose this? Should I withhold this? Is it something I need to be mentioning? Is it something I need to be holding back? You don't make the judgment by yourself. The truth is too great to compromise or to risk in compromising. The truth is too great for us to make mistakes with it. At least we should ask. See, Moshe Rabbeinu is showing he didn't want to withhold the truth. And that's also connecting with the theme of this shiur, in that Moshe Rabbeinu also showed that he's human. Aaron showed he was human by feeling this lack of faith, not lack of faith, but his reticence in coming forward. And Moshe Rabbeinu also showed that he's also only human, that he also forgot, and he wanted to show the truth. So we're all human. There's two great leaders in this week's parasha are showing us that they're not always perfect, and we can learn tremendous musar from this. I want to mention one last point, and I'm going to tell you that story. So now we're moving to Perek Yud Aleph. We're talking about the kashrut of animals. Kol mafreset parsa u'shosat shesa prasod malat geira babehema otah tochelu. What are the preconditions for an animal to be kosher? Any school child knows it has to have split hooves and chew the cud. What is chewing the cud? In case anybody doesn't know that particular phrase, it means an animal will eat something, will chew it, get it into a liquid state, and then regurgitate it and eat it again. It's not exactly something we can identify to as humans, but this is how animals function. That's how Hashem made them. So animals do this. A cow does this. He eats, he regurgitates. So those are the two conditions: split hooves and chewing the cud. Other non-kosher animals either have split hooves or they chew the cud. They don't have both. So I heard a nice, interesting, I never heard this before, a nice, interesting explanation to show the differences between us and the different nations of the world. Because what does split hooves mean? What does a hoof represent? It represents the animal, the way the animal is mobile. An animal walks on its feet. It goes forward. It uses its hooves to advance. So the same thing with certain animals, they move forward. And they only have split hooves, the non-kosher ones I'm talking about. That signifies advancement. Other nations will believe in the so-called sanctity of advancement. You have to look forward. You always have to have advances in technology. You look forward. The iPhone 4 is a dinosaur now. We have the iPhone 5, and we have to move forward. And the old technology is no good, and we never look back. What's the point of looking back? You have to always go forward. Now that's good in a way, But if you have that by itself, that's not so good. Because sometimes you have to look back. And you have to look over your shoulder. And you have to see, we learned something from the past. It's not always about moving forward incessantly and not looking over your shoulder. That's why some animals have only that sign, the sign of the hoof. Now what about the other sign, chewing the cud? What does that show? Now chewing the cud, again, we just said that it means the animal eats something and it brings it up again. What's it doing in effect? Bringing it up is the past. You already chewed that thing already. Now you're bringing it up again and you're eating it again. That signifies the past. There are some nations that only look in the past and they only want to look back at past victories and how they were in the good old days, but they don't look forward. There's no advancement. But the Jew, represented by the kosher animals, has both. Of course, we always look to the future. Who isn't looking forward to Mashiach? We talk about it every week. We're constantly looking forward to the day when Hashem's name is brought up instead of being pushed down all the time. We want Hashem's name to be raised, not to be lowly. That's not what we want to see Hashem's name. We want to see Hashem Achalush Moachad. We want to see Hashem being raised to the highest level. So we're always looking to the future. But what about the past? We also have to look behind us and look, how do we get to this stage? Through Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo. How many tzaddikim we have in our past? Can we ignore them? Can we just look to the future and say that was the past? That doesn't matter. So the Jew has both these qualities. The quality of the hoof, meaning moving forward, always looking forward, always trying to improve. And also the quality of the cud, regurgitating, looking at the past and looking for inspiration from the people who came before us. And we're supposed to be kadosh, kedusha. There are two meanings of the word kedusha. Kedusha, if you ask somebody, what does kedusha mean? What does kadosh mean? It means holy. That's the most common translation. But there's another translation which we sometimes give, that kedusha can mean separate, like the word kedesha. A kedesha is another word for zonah, an immoral woman. She's called a kedesha. Does that mean she's holy? No. It means she's separate. She's separate from society. Normal society is people get married, people have children, build families, build the future. Kedusha is not part of that equation. She's separate. So Kedusha means separate. So I was thinking to myself, how do we have a fusion of those two concepts? The concept of being holy and the concept of being separate. And there was a word in English that I thought was a very good fusion of these two words. The word which fuses holy and fuses separate is the word distinction. Perhaps you can say Kedusha means distinction, because a person has to be of distinct bearing. He has to have noble bearing. He's got to be on a higher plane, but also he has to be distinct. He has to be different from the nations. We're not like the nations who rejected any connection with the Torah. We are distinct from them. Whether we like it or not, or whether they like it or not, that's the reality. We are the Am HaNivchar. And that's how it is. That's Hashem's words. That's not my words. Hashem said we're the Am HaNivchar. So we are distinct. We are people of distinction. And now I'm going to tell you, we're going to finish off with that story. A story of a Jew who realized this message of distinction. Who realized that a Jew is supposed to be different. He's supposed to be a Jew at all costs. It's a story of none other than the Steipler Gaon, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, who's the father of our own Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Lavdil ben Chaim Lachaim, Agadol Ador. So his father was the Steipler Gaon. Now when the Steipler Gaon was going on a shidduch with the sister of the Chazon Ish, he told her the following story. The Steipler said that he was sent to Siberia, and in Siberia, I didn't tell you, the temperatures were way below zero, and it was extremely hard, and the Russians were very cruel, and they would not take no for an answer. And there are some terrible stories, unbelievable stories of cruelty the Russians used to do to the people who would be working there under unbearable conditions. So it happened that the Steipler Gaon he was employed to do a certain job or task, which he would do. I'm here, I have to do the work, I do the work. But he was also told, you have to work 7 days a week, including Shabbat. So he told his taskmaster, he said, I don't work on Shabbat. So the Russian said to him, no, you're going to argue with us? We're not going to take no for an answer. So he flatly refused. So the Russian said to him, okay, I've got a deal for you. If you do a certain task for me and you survive this task, then you won't be required to work on your Sabbath. So, okay, well, what do you need me to do? So the Russian said to him the following. He said, I will form two rows of Russian soldiers. Like, you have a row of soldiers on the left and a row of soldiers on the right and a path in between. And you, pointing to the Steipler, you have to go from one end through the middle of these two rows. And meanwhile, every Russian on the left and the right hand side of you will be armed with clubs. And they'll beat you. And if you can get through from one end of the row to the other end of the row and you survive, then you can keep your Sabbath. Now, the Steipler, being the Steipler, he didn't need to think twice. He thinks, my Shabbat is my Shabbat. My Shabbat is not negotiable. I'm willing to give my life for Shabbat. If I come out the other end and I survive, all well and good. If not, I'll die for Shabbat. My Shabbat, I can't compromise that. So that's exactly what he did. He ran through this row, and I'm sure it wasn't just 2 or 3 soldiers on each side. I'm sure it was a whole line. And of course, these Russians were merciless. They beat him, and they beat him to a pulp, and he was covered with blood, and he shielded his head. And at the end, he got to the other end, he collapsed in a pile, and it's like he wasn't moving, but he was breathing. And he survived. And they told him, you can keep your Shabbat. And of course, they left him there. They weren't going to pick him up and put him on a chair. They left him there as if he was going to die, he was going to die. But he did survive. And what Mesirut Nefesh he gave for Shabbat. What Mesirut Nefesh he gave to showing that Shabbat is not for compromise. Now, when he told that story to the woman opposite him, the sister of the Chazon Ish, he said to her, this is what I stand for. This is how much I want to keep my connection to Hashem. Do you want to join me? You want to complete my mission with me? And of course, the rest is history, because he married this woman and he became the brother-in-law of the Chazon Ish. How much more so all of us, who we have mitzvot we can keep with ease. Shabbat for us is easy to keep nowadays. It's, we have shuls so close to us that all the conveniences we have to keep Shabbat. We don't have candles that can go out in the middle of the night, and we wake up and everything is dark. We have Shabbat clocks. We've got every convenience. We have Shabbat plates, a blech. We've got everything we need. So what excuse do we have for not keeping Shabbat? What excuse do we have? We don't have much of an excuse. All we have to do is look back and think of the Steipler Gaon and see what he put. He put his life on the line for his Creator. None of us should be tested in this way. None of us should need to be tested anywhere near such a test. So let's surpass this test. Let's show Hashem we're worthy not to have these tests. Let's show Hashem our love and keep Shabbat using all the conveniences we have and using that as a vehicle to serve Hashem. Yehi Ratzon, all of us should use everything that Hashem gave us, which is perfect. It's perfection that we need to serve Hashem. Everything Hashem gives us is the perfection that we need to serve Him. Let's recognize and use all the kalim, all the utensils, all the talents and the capabilities that He gave us in the service of Hashem. And we will use that to bring this Pesach, even before this Pesach, the Geula Shlema, Mashiach Tzidkenu, the Binyan Ariel, which should stay Adei Ad and never be destroyed. And we'll all dance with Mashiach, Eliyahu Navi, and all the previous generations who we're connecting to. And in this way, there will be Hashem Echad, Ushmo Echad. Thank you for coming.